On tonight's very special, extra special live stream of the Talkin TV podcast, we are celebrating our 300 subscriber celebration, people. That's right, we finally made it. We're there. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of shit today. We're going to be talking about Kim's Convenience. We're going to be talking about The Witcher. We're going to be breaking down the Razzies and whether awards shows still actually matter, as we've been saying for the last couple of months. It's going to be insane. I'm Dom the Movie Nerd.
I'm Chris the TV Nerd. We have one hell of a show for you. Stay right where you are. Let's do this, Dom.
You guys are not going to want to miss this. All right, Chris, we made it. We're here. I told you we were going to do this. I told you. What did I say? What did I say? Within the first 3 months of the year, we are going to be at 300.
You really did say that, man.
I told you. I don't know if it was like that verbatim, but I said it something along those lines. We will be at 300 within the first couple of months within the year.
You're the closest thing I have to, a fortune teller?
Look, all I know is that when
you do a decent job.
Look, all I know is that I was trained how to read legibly, I will say, at a very early age. And when the writing is quite literally on the wall, as far as the upward trajectory of a certain thing's success, usually the only thing that will cause any sort of damage once you're on a constant high like that, it has to be something so colossally catastrophic. You know what? I'm going to stop talking before I jinx us because I've had a really, really bad track record with that recently. Just saying. But, man, how you doing, man? How you feeling?
I'm honestly doing really good, man. It's been a great week for the channel. A great past 2 weeks, honestly, kicking it off with our Sujith Varghese interview.
Yeah.
And there's been some ups and downs emotionally,
yeah,
but nothing that is super important to what's going on in my life and all that. Thankfully, it's more so entertainment drama that actually hit home for the first time. We'll get into all of it, but yeah, so needless to say, personally, I've been good, and I mean, dude, 300 subscribers. I've never been better. Let's just say that.
Yeah, well, look, all I'm going to say is that this past week specifically was very good for me for a couple different reasons that I won't yet announce on the podcast just yet, but you know what I'm talking about. And yes, Luke, you are quite right. You are not going to want to miss this. So, I mean, look, obviously, it's safe to say that we had a goal when we started this channel, but I think it's safe to say also that I feel like we're more locked in now than ever, because it's so crazy for me to think back to 2 years ago when we first started. Yeah, it's pretty much almost 2 years ago now, because we're going to be in July soon before we know it. And July was when we first started officially recording, right? So, I mean, this episode is kind of momentous in more than one occasion, because in addition to reaching 300 subscribers, again, it's not the exact day, but this is roughly the 1 year anniversary since we started on YouTube. You know, the Corona anniversary, I guess, for lack of a better word, was actually, if I'm remembering correctly, it was roughly around this time period last year.
Well, what was the first video that we did? Because I'll go look up the exact date
video
right now.
Or the first podcast, because we did 2 more audio exclusive podcasts before we switched to full video once the pandemic set in. Because I remember, our last episode that we did pre the pandemic was the Onward episode, which was also when we had our first guest on, Colin Williams, shout out to him, on audio. When we were doing audio exclusive. Then once the pandemic hit and we quickly pivoted, we did Westworld, the season 3 premiere. Oh, man. Wow. It's still crazy to think that we act that again, because Westworld is the show that everyone forgot about last year. And we did Scott Pilgrim for the 10-year anniversary, even though it wasn't technically the 10-year anniversary. And then I want to see if you can actually remember what our first video episode was, because you, of all people, should know.
Man.
Come
I
on.
know what it was.
Okay. There we go.
I always go back to that video.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's the Lost webisode, man.
Yeah.
What other way were we going to make our debut appearance on YouTube?
We were going to do it for your birthday, for around that time, your birthday last year anyways, but I mean, the timing just worked out. And what could have been better?
Out.
I had just finished, because I told you, I'm like, Chris, I will have the show, if we have a date locked in for when we're going to do this, I will have the show finished. And I did, because I think I'm always kind of fuzzy as to when my Lost for watching for the second half of the show came in, because my whole, I explained this, but I'll say it again. I don't care, because it's fun. It's good podcasting with storytelling, is repetition. with my Lost rewatch, it was one of the many drama shows of kind of like that first wave of drama shows that I started to hit coming out of high school and into college. And the problem is Lost because both the fact that how many episodes there were per season for those first 3 seasons before they shortened it for the last 3. And also, again, no offense to the storytelling, because again, the storytelling is much better, but because for how long those episodes felt, it took me a while to get through. And I barely finished season 3. Like by the time I started it senior year of high school, and I didn't finish season 3 until sophomore year of college, because I finished season 3 before I left Duchess. But after a while I was like, oh man, I need a break. And then when I graduated, I'm like, okay, now we can get back into the swing of things. So I remember, because we said we were going to do Lost at some point, and I knew we were going to do it for the podcast back in season 1. I just didn't know when, but I wanted to be caught up on it. So I started rewatching it. I remember because this was still while I was working in the store, fall 19. And that's when I started with season 4, which then, with how fast those seasons moved once I got into season 4, because the writers I was like, oh my God, finally, some pace, some tension, after a fucking getting dicked around for 8 episodes of just them stuck in cages and not actually doing anything. Finally, we got people coming to the island, there's some actual stake, there's some tension going, we're finally
You're saying
going.
season 4, right? The writers' strike season?
Yeah, season 4, which is my second.
They brought in some amazing writers.
No, that was this. Well, no, because when did they bring in Brian K. Vaughan? Was that season 3 or 4? That was season 4. Okay, so that's when they brought in Brian K. Vaughan, and that's when they brought in all the guys that basically took it for the second half of the show. And like I said, season 4, I famously said, is my second favorite season of the show after the first season. I loved that season because, to me, season 4 was still at the point where the show, I guess, had some real-world credibility before it fully dove into, to me, the nonsense that was those last 2 seasons. But even with the ridiculousness that we went through with those last 2 seasons, at the very least, they were fast as hell and entertaining and engaging as hell. And so as a result, that made the binge that much easier. So I knocked out 4 and 5 in a row.
Well, season 5's weird. Yeah, because halfway through season 5 is when they, for some reason, during the writing process, the strike had lifted. And so you have writers like Brian K. Vaughan who did 2 episodes at the start of season 5, but then they canned all those guys that they had brought in for the most part.
You know why?
Went back
they got their staff writers back.
They went back to the staff guys, but
because they got their staff writers back.
Because as much as I love the staff writers, because there's the great story, the great moment of the staff writers going to Charlie and saying, hey, look, Dominic, we have an amazing arc for you. And unfortunately, it might be impactful if you leave the show. But they were actually super gracious. They loved him so much. He was such a presence, too, at that point in time in the film industry. To have him on your show was a big deal back then. Dominic Monaghan, of course.
He landed what was at the time the biggest TV show after he'd already finished up with at the time the biggest film trilogy of all time with Lord of the Rings. I don't know if there weren't that many people that were hotter than Dominic Monaghan circa that 2004 to 2006 period.
Not really. No, he was one of the A-listers of that time, and he definitely gave the show a lot of credibility, along with legends like Terry O'Quinn sort of being in the cast. But that, not to get too far away from the point. So the staff writers offered Dominic Monaghan the choice. We can keep Charlie around. We will make it work, but we do have this great ending. And if you're up for it, and Dominic was like, yeah, no, I'm going to do what's right for the show. But that's got to be such a scary situation to get to that point, to have that conversation, then get canned from your job because of a strike, and then sort of, what are you going to do? How do we fix this? And you arguably have the best written season after that season.
To me, it's still so crazy to me to think about it because, again, as problematic as those last 2 seasons are, at the very least, there is still some good moments in there. But to me, the show was over as far as season 4. Everything as far as season 4 was going was, I'm like, okay, they're finally going to get off the island, but there's still some trepidation because Locke doesn't want to it was setting itself up to end perfectly. And then to me, I'm sorry, I know you still love it. You love this show. But the minute that Ben flips and starts shifting the island and the island disappeared, that's when I was like, and I feel like that was also when a lot of, again, you were in the ground more so at the time, but I feel like that's when a lot of people were like, okay, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. Well, I actually started watching Lost for the summer of before season 6. I caught up to watch the finale live. I was really young. You got to remember, and to be honest, I was a little bit of a scaredy cat when I was a little kid. And the others, man, when they first come out in those woods,
they're scary as fuck.
And they're doing that little whisper thing, and the camera starts spinning. That's good filmmaking. That got me as a little kid. And so I couldn't really watch that show until I was of a certain age. So I kind of binged seasons 1 through 5. honestly probably my first binge in my life with the DVDs, getting them from the library each week, as I know many people have. And
back there.
so getting it back to back like that, I don't see as many problems with my blinders on, maybe my nostalgia goggles. Although I really don't think Lost really finds issues until season 6, and then I really don't think there are too many. But again, I've always said I'm a little biased on this show, but. So maybe because of the fact that it was like one of my first binges, it kind of harkens back to like, and I do not want to talk about WandaVision at all, but some of the debates we were having throughout the course of that show. And it's just so funny to sort of see the early effects sort of, because we're looking back, right? We're talking about, why are we even talking about Lost for all you guys tuning in? There's a bunch of you in the chat, because a year ago, roughly in this time frame, we started on YouTube and our first webisode was Lost. So Dom, before we get back into that conversation, the chat is being really kind to us. So I want to
lighten up right now. So
acknowledge
let's
them, and then
shout outs. Absolutely.
Stranger Boy, as always, man. I don't know if you've missed like a single stream, dude. Thank you so much.
There's been like a couple, but still, he's one of our most devoted fans. So
like he's the homie for sure. Thank you so much, Stranger Boy. Brando, happy housewarming, my friend.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Jay Manley showing up as always. What's up, Jay? Really excited to see what we all talk about here tonight. Stacy, what's going on, Stacy? That's I don't know if you know, that's AJ's wife. AJ reacts
figured.
too.
Okay, so, yes, I was actually wondering, but yeah.
Really appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out and showing some support. It means a lot. And thanks, Jay. Appreciate that, man. Of course, AJ in the chat, my dude. Thank you so very much, man. It's been an honor, collaborating with you over this journey. Many more
honor and a privilege.
Celebration live streams, hopefully to come. And the man,
Elliot,
the myth, the legend himself,
gets the fucking MVP for filling in my normal role of punking Joe with the community pun. Thank you for that, Elliot. That is all that I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, Elliot, man, and congrats to you as well, my friend. You are, we're
absolutely.
Really happy to see you doing well. Because truth be told, you're the reason we had the courage to continue on this YouTube thing at first.
We would have kept going even without him. Let's be honest.
But he made it so much easier.
He did.
Like hosting he gave us that little subscriber bump at first, hosting our show that had 0 subscribers on his channel.
Do you remember the first time that we had him on is the question. His first episode, because I do. I want to see if you do, though.
The first time we had Elliot
on. I remember.
Damn.
It was before
remind me.
Because after we had Elliot on, the rest of the guys started to trickle in, because we had Brando and David on for like our first big watch along. Well, no, because you met those guys through Elliot's hosting of Infinity War and Endgame watch alongs, and then as a result, we went into the watch along phase, and that's where we started to get the trickle down. But the first episode that we had Elliot was our second major guest that we had on, from the YouTube space that wasn't in a real life After Colin, and that episode was Contagion.
Oh, but okay. But I said that because we technically had him hosted on his channel first, you remember? And then we put the audio up on our Anchor and our Spotify, because Elliot was like,
that's right.
He was so nice. He had this channel that just started their YouTube channel, and we hit him up and we're like, hey man, if you don't mind, we would kind of like to do the stream on your thing so people actually watch it.
You know why it's throwing me for a loop? Because we still recorded it in video form. For the discussion. I forgot that was audio exclusive, though.
Because we did the exclusive video with Elliot, like a brand deal out the gates. We didn't even know what we were doing.
I completely forgot about that. Wow.
And Joe as well, man.
Yes,
appreciate
Joe
that,
as well.
Thank you.
Man.
Always with the good jokes. We love it.
Yes. Always believe in Chris. Dom nuts. Oh, man. I just wanted to say that one of my absolute favorite comment sections so far is Joe trying to riff on me when, you know how I start every single Instagram description that I've ever done on our page with "all right people," and he does it all caps in the comments on one of our videos, "all right people," and then I commented back, "all right, Joe."
That's really good.
It's never gonna end. I love it.
One.
I love it.
That's really good.
It's pretty great. I like I said, I have an incredible back and forth with everyone that we meet up with. So,
dude, that's that's why I love doing this type of thing, man. There's so many reasons why I love doing this. But let me share a screen share, Dom?
Yes,
because
please do.
Before we get too far away from the initial sort of why we even spoke about Lost. We're a little wrong, but that's okay, because this is the 300 subscriber celebration, and we have a lot planned. So honestly, the schedule, we would love to do the exact date and time, but let's be honest, we got some hot content. So it's April 1st, actually, is our 1 year on YouTube.
April 1st, okay, was our one. Okay, so that's technically the 1 year.
Junky setup.
I think oh man, dude. You know what? God. That's still one of my favorite videos to go back and what's it called? That's one of my favorite videos to go back and watch. That's the thing.
That's hilarious.
I still
Look at
love
that.
it.
Oh man, we've come a long way. That's what that tells me. Had to just throw that up there for posterity's sake.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. So yeah, Dom, we have like a lot of different things to talk about. Of course, if you guys are in the chat, if there's anything you want to discuss, let's discuss it. But where do you want to start, man? We got a bunch of different topics.
Look, we do have a lot to talk about. Obviously, again, I wanted to dive into a couple of the topics, but real quick, I just realized. So we've told the story of how we met before, right? On here, have we told that story?
We have, but to be honest, I don't really know who heard it. It was a long time ago when we told it.
You know what? I feel like we told bits and pieces of that story in so many different ways and shapes to different people, whether we were actually live or whether we weren't or not. I honestly can't remember. So I kind of, before we get into like some of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight, I kind of wanted to tell the people just like how we met and kind of like how the Talkin TV, I'll say power couple that I'll call us. I'll go there and call us a power couple because let's face it, you can't have one without the other at this point. You know, we've tried with mixed and varied results. It's usually never the same. There's a reason why you're the only podcast host that's lasted longer than like a couple months with me. Like, you're just the only one that can handle me. But Chris, I need the people to hear it from your voice exactly, because the details are still a little fuzzy. Obviously, there's been lots of pots smoked since that time that we met. So I need you to specifically fulfill the people. I just want to, because also this is kind of a unique experience for me. I want the people to understand what was going through your brain when you first heard me open my mouth and speak in the class that we were in. Because again, the crucial piece for storytelling, just for any of those future screenwriters out there, context matters.
Yeah, well, the first thing I remember about you isn't actually what you said. It's more so the smell that you had associated with you. Because, you know, the sense of smell is one of the strongest senses. And there's a lot of association there with, and it's not even like that you smelled bad. You've always smelled. I've actually never noticed like a cologne or a deodorant smell from you. You've always smelled pretty neutral. Like you've never smelled bad. You've never smelled good. And I don't want to really smell my friends before we fall off the wagon too much. But the reason I say this is because we're in this classroom in our community college, and picture like what you would think like the New York Times editing room table is. Like those long tables where there's the head and there's like a bunch of different chairs all around it, and that's like the classroom. Professor's at the head and we're all sitting at the other side of the table, sort of like, you know, there's like a little bit of a space between us and the professor, but we're all on this one giant table in this pretty big room. It was a really great room, 116. And you in the middle of class just take out a Tupperware, but it's one of those.
I fucking knew it was my food. It's always my food.
Yeah.
I've been called that my food smells since sophomore year of high school. I knew it.
Yeah, and so you pull out this Tupperware top that clenches onto this glass. Not
container.
It's not Tupperware.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Don't call it what it is. Tupperware is. The term is not exclusive. It doesn't have to be made of plastic.
I didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, you have like this glass piece of Tupperware, and you open it up, and you're like taking out a fork, and there's like, yeah, Dom stank, dude.
Yeah. I'd been stinking for a long time at that point.
And like it was encouraged to eat in the classroom in our film production classes for whatever reason why. Like, hey, let's eat around equipment with college kids. That's not going to go wrong. But that's a story for another day. You know, certain professors can be talked about later on. Not Professor Pat. We love him.
No,
but
not Pat. Pat's the best.
Yeah. Pat didn't allow eating in the classroom, by the way, guys. He was what you
can
call a hard ass.
Certain other professors that we will never, ever have on the podcast is all that I have to say to that.
Yeah, well, there's certain professors that shouldn't teach film. You know?
There are some professors that just shouldn't teach in general. How about that?
That is true. Not to get too far off the wagon of the point, but yeah, so I don't know. I think it was like, I looked like lentils. There was like a beef in it and a rice. I know for a fact it was like a grain style rice because you eat pretty lean. Like that's why you're so skinny. Like you do sort of eat out with friends and stuff. And I've seen you house like 2 burgers and like an order of giant onion rings and fries.
You've seen me house more than that. You've seen me house more than that.
You're a twig because you eat very lean at home, and you brought some food from home, but you're just like chowing down unapologetically, dude. And it's like one of the first days, and everyone's just staring at you, and then you're responding to the teacher with food in your mouth. And I was like, wow, this guy's got a pair, you know, like for lack of a better term, because he's just unapologetically being himself right now. And so it's like a flattering memory associated with a very stinky start.
I feel like there's no other way in which someone could have described how we met. Because, look, all I'm going to say to the food comment is, I'm like, first off, all I have to say is thanks, Mom. Because I complained about the fact that people made fun of me in high school for the fact that, because I had so many honors classes, there were certain years I just didn't have a lunch period. So I had to eat in class because I'm like, otherwise I wasn't going to eat throughout the day. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, look, food is too important to me. I'm not going to not fucking eat because people are making fun of how my food smells, you know? I don't care. Guess what? I'm still eating food that's better than fucking all the shit they're eating. So I let's just say I learned at an early age to develop a thick skin when it came to the smell of my food as far as that goes. But yeah, in that case, all that I have to say is thanks, Mom, because without it, who knows if Chris and I would even be sitting here right now. So it's funny how that works.
It certainly made me remember you. Like, yeah. I think, because it was my second semester, maybe your first, I believe I was there.
We met, that was actually my third. That was my third semester. It was fall 2016, which would have been my third semester at Oswego.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so you'd been going there a year before me.
Yeah, I was there. I started in fall of 2015.
And so all I knew was a friend of ours, Matt. I don't think we need to say the last name, but
yeah, we've already talked about him enough in many, many different ways, shapes, and forms.
And so I was just like, damn, like, okay, we got some characters in this class. And that's what I remember. And then, of course, of all the odds, we get paired in a group project. She breaks this class of 24 up into 4. So there's only, 5 groups there that you can get? I'm not
Something
good with
like
math.
that.
And to ask me to do on the spot is just not going to happen.
24 divided by 4, it's 6 groups, roughly.
6 groups. And it's like, of course, I get paired with Dom. But that's how the stories normally go, right?
Yep. And then as soon as we started talking, well, for me, the first memory is just, once Dana learned to, stop talking. And I realized early on, again, like nobody needs to know, but I realized early on that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get anything of substance from this person. And then I started talking with you, and I immediately figured, I'm like, oh my God, this guy actually knows his stuff. Or at the very least, like I'm like, oh my God, this guy can talk about movies in a way that I can talk about movies. And I should preface by saying this, that like I'd already kind of sort of had that in my first year at Dutchess, but the difference being is that, look, the way that I'll say that, like, kind of the fucking, oh my God, I don't even know how to fucking begin to describe Dutchess Community College social stratus, but the way that the Dutchess is that if you had the one professor, you were pretty much in that sect. And if you had this other professor, you were in this other sect. And I was in the one sect the year before for my first year at Dutchess. And after my first year, let's just say I'd kind of had it up to here with that professor. So I switched sects to the other professor, really, for those classes. And that was when I ended up meeting you. And
let me give some context on that before. Because like our community college is weird in the sense that, yes, it's a 2-year university, but the film program doesn't act like that. So you kind of choose a concentration. And so one of the professors concentrated in documentary, the other concentrated more in film, TV, news broadcasting style. And so I was in the news, TV broadcasting style because, TV nerd. And you were originally in the documentary.
Yes, I was.
Which is weird.
Well, the problem is, it was a combination of, I was brand new. I was 18 in a year that was mostly filled with 21 through 30-year-olds, which was obviously, again, I feel like, again, only me. And so that was weird. And then once I figured out that we would be making documentaries, I'm like, first off, I'm like, okay, I guess because at the time I was a fresh student, wanted to learn as much about movies as possible. But I'm like, after that 1 year, I'm like, yeah, I went to my first film festival that year, which was awesome as a freshman in college. Again, like I'm never gonna, fucking like look back on those memories badly. Like those are some great memories. But after my first year, I kind of figured out, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to make documentaries. I'm like, I don't watch documentaries. I don't give a shit about documentaries. Almost every documentary that I'd watched at that point, I fell asleep. So, Brandon, I actually do have a great answer to that question that I will get to. But after that year, I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit about documentaries. I want to make movies, I want to learn about that. And again, as problematic as that second year was with when I jumped to that second ship, at the very least, I would say that to me, the majority of my core friendships and still kind of lasting relationships that I have made from Dutchess come from that second year, much more so than that first. I think I talked to maybe one person from that first year at Dutchess, and I don't even think they were a film major to begin with. So
I had the exact opposite experience. The 2 kids that I met in my first ever class at Dutchess Film Program, I went on to be roommates with down in New York City when we went to film school. But it's just so funny. Like, you joined the year before me, and just that group of people was just so different. So, some good times, man. We had a really cool, and guys, just so you know, like, we're pretty blessed, and I guess it's up to Dom and I to make something of it, because our area where we live right now, there's an old catering hall that just got sold. Unfortunately, they lost their business because of COVID, but they sold it to a film production studio that's unnamed, but apparently it's a major player, and that's a huge place. They're going to turn into a warehouse. We had 3 HBO shows being shot at the moment. What's going on?
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
The exodus of New York City is upon us.
Yeah. It's nuts. It's the crazy tax incentives that our area is giving right now. It's insane. And here's the thing: they've been shooting movies here since like long before we were even aware of it. Like they shot a large portion of War of the Worlds like in and around this area. But now
Quiet Place was shot literally 5 minutes from where I live.
But
I still can't find the place.
I feel like it was Quiet Place was like really what I feel like put us on the map. And now with I Know This Much Is True, which again, I'm still confused as to why Mark Ruffalo was the only person really being honored for that show, but whatever. And now, like, again, we've got some more big, but let's just say that a couple of very, very big projects that are coming out soon that we obviously cannot talk about yet just for sake of, NDAs or whatever, are being shot here. And we obviously are gonna fucking honor are gonna fucking shout the shit out of our area when those movies eventually come out. But
we're probably gonna get some people on. We're probably gonna know some people who are gonna work on that.
We already know people who are working on that. Is all that I have to say to that. So, yeah, I wanted to get into Brandon's question first before we dove into another topic, which is best/worst movie. So I'm actually going to take this one only because, Chris, you've already actually told what is your worst movie day. Like,
I'll save it again for a later live stream.
It's an incredible story, and I love hearing you say it, and it is absolutely great. But so I'm going to tell you the story of my worst movie date, which, again, I've seen a lot of movies with a lot of different people. So obviously, again, not all of them are going to be good. Not all of them are going to be bad per se. But to me, I would probably say that the worst is, again, it's a combination of all the errors. It's a combination of being too young to really understand what was going on, misreading a lot of the messages, misreading your relationship that you had with said person in the moment, and also just the quality of the movie. Because when I was this would have been 2012. So summer between freshman and sophomore years of high school for me, my mom actually drove me to see an old friend of ours who lived in Middletown, who, again, we had seen these people all the time when we were growing up, when we were kids, and then as we got older, we just grew apart. And it was in one of those rough patches where we both thought that we liked each other, but we didn't actually. So it was one of the, again, like, she was a year younger than me. She was the year behind me, even though she was roughly the same age as me. So we were both like 14, 15. And we went to see, again, it was summer of 2012. And at that month, there was not that much to see in theaters. And we were going to settle and see Snow White and the Huntsman. But we ended up seeing Tyler Perry's Medea's Witness Protection Program.
Wow, what a switch up.
Which, again, I knew nothing at the time about Tyler Perry, Medea, just himself as I knew nothing about any of those movies. So when we were in the theater, it was already bad enough because, of course, me being me, I was trying to strike up a conversation with this girl. This girl was not having it. She barely wanted to talk to me about anything except for what she wanted to talk about. And I could kind of already tell, it's the side that, your date is already off to a bad start when you're having a better conversation with her parents than you are with her. That's already a bad. Even when you're 14 and 15, like even at that age, I knew like this is not off to a good start. But I was still positive. I still had a little bit of what's the word? Hope for the world, I guess, before like my cynicism set in. And so we went to see it. And believe it or not, again, I was 14. I had no idea what good comedy was. I was dying laughing in the theater. I was having a great time. I was vibing with the crowd. I was having a great time. And every time I looked at her, she would stone cold expression on her face, like after everything. So after it was all said and done, we were still trying to, she just had like this just like dead stare and just dead mood on her face the entire time. And by the time we were done, I kind of realized, this is not going to go anywhere, And so her dad drove us home again, talked more with her dad on the way back than I did with her, which again was a bad sign. And then when we got back, this is how I officially got confirmation, which was she texted me and said, "Hey, I had a really fun time." And right then I knew, I'm like, bitch, no, you didn't. You barely said a word to me throughout the entire thing that wasn't condescending or making fun of me in some way, basically ridiculing me for attempting to have a good time with you. No, that's when I knew. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is not going to go anywhere. And what's worse is she had the gall to be jealous of me she had the goal to be jealous of me later on when she saw that I was actually dating someone else when I started dating my first girlfriend at the time. So that to me is easily the worst date that I have ever been on for movies. There are a couple other bad ones, but that to me will always be the most memorable. It's like, yeah, this is the worst just movie occasion. Again, forgetting the fact that it was a Tyler Perry Medea movie, but when a Tyler Perry Medea movie is the best part about your date, something is seriously wrong.
Yeah, I also chalk that up kind of to being just so young. I mean, that's such a young...
but the problem is my experience with love has been a tumultuous one because the problem is I got ripped way too early. Like I had my first it wasn't even like I will still call it a serious I had my first serious relationship at 15. I was 15 when I started dating my first girlfriend, and I still consider her to be my only girlfriend. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, we'll save those stories for the 1,000 subscriber celebration.
That's a story for much later on. So we're going to need to have a lot more subscribers before I'm willing to go that deep into my personal life.
So Brando says, speaking of docs, have you seen Religious? No.
Religulous. I've never heard of it. What is it about? Brandon, please tell us what it is about.
Yeah, he might be doing his housewarming live stream, but if you're still hanging, man, let us know. I've never heard of that. Yeah, dude, people are loving your energy right now. I don't know if you saw that.
I commented, I did see it, and I did comment to you, and many people have tried. None have succeeded in cracking the movie nerd energy formula.
Luke said it's crazy. What is AJ saying? AJ said Dom's energy is contagious. You're getting people pumped, man. I'm pumped just listening to you right now.
Specific connotation, which is I'm pumped for no reason. I love that's great. Thank you,
Jay
AJ.
Jay loves docs, and he wants to know what these... Nah, Jay, we're not telling you who's coming on. We can't. NDAs, man. We don't want to screw our friends who are working on the shows over.
We are officially, legally not allowed to tell you.
But when we do the live stream, because we will go live with these people, we'll ask them questions you want to ask them. That's what we can do for you guys. We wish we could tell you more. We just can't. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah, so, damn, AJ... Damn, that question got AJ thinking about some bad dates. Ooh, okay.
Yo, man, sorry, AJ. Got deep. Sorry, we weren't trying to go that deep. We were just trying to have some fun there.
Brando. Good old Brando. Basic entertainment.
Kind of unintentionally started to Americanize Brando, and now we started to use fucking pop regular Americanized terms. I love it.
Yeah, Matt shouting out the congrats. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
What's going on, dude?
Appreciate it a lot. I'm looking forward. I'm wondering who these faces are going to be on our Falcon and Winter Soldier panel. You know?
Really.
That's what I'm. What I'm wondering. But kick rocks. Now that's Canadian. Okay. That is a very Canadian thing to say.
I figured. Okay.
So yeah, let's answer some of these chat questions. Then I want to talk a little bit about some of the topics.
Yes.
Yeah. So AJ wants to know how and who came up with your podcast name.
That's all
Talkin
you.
TV.
That's all you.
Yeah. So basically, AJ, Dom and I had a podcast in 2017.
Yep, late 2016, early 2017. It was I actually remember what 6 topics we did. It was Rogue One. We talked about the Golden Globes at the time, where I recited all my nominations. Our last episode, which is episode 6, was the first Stranger Things episode with Johnny and Andrew. We did Legion. We did Sing Street. And we did the Hateful Eight. The Hateful Eight was our second episode. Those were the 6 episodes that we did on the movie, on that version of the movie. There were several different versions, but that version of the Movie Nerd podcast.
Mm-hmm. And so then what happened was we were just both at different places with it. Dom was, I think, a little more serious, if I'm just being honest. And I enjoyed it, but the problem was the band at the time was so demanding, and we were trying to really set up and get to a place. And it was just still learning how to balance, multiple endeavors that you want to become more than hobbies. Hence why we're doing this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We still love it, but obviously we have ambitions with it. And so we were just in a different place, and then you ended up graduating and going upstate, and that ultimately kind of killed it because it's before we knew about StreamYard and anything. I wouldn't even consider myself an audio engineer back then. So it's there was a lot of obstacles. But so then somewhere along the line in 2019...
I actually remember you called me out of nowhere, I thought. I'm like, what? I'm like, I haven't talked to Chris in months. What is he doing calling me here?
Well, Mike, so I've been to a few different colleges and studied a few different things and made a couple different friend groups, but the one that actually stuck and became almost, I don't want to say substituting of my core friend group, because I like to think I've integrated them pretty well, was this DCC sort of Dutchess, community college, what we've been talking about, really, film program, all you guys that and girls too, Rosalani was a really, and I still, every now and then we'll talk to her on Instagram. She's doing great stuff. We have a lot of people that we went to college with who are doing really well, and just, you get to know people. And so I just wanted to see how people were doing. So I was making my rounds. What's going on, man? How you doing? How's everything been? Because it got lonely at Dutchess after all you guys left. I was stuck there with Tyler and Hawk, who I ended up going on to live with. Probably because there was just 3 of us left, to be honest with you.
Oh, man.
Because we joined a little later. But, yeah, so then I give Dom a call. And we keep in touch, and we kind of rebuild the friendship. You come down and you visit me a few times.
Yeah,
while I'm living in
about
Brooklyn.
that time when we walked around the city just randomly until like what, midnight or something. How late were we even?
Like 1 a.m. and it was like freezing, pouring rain. We were in the middle of like.
It wasn't pouring rain. It was drizzling.
But it was cold.
It was
really cold.
It was cold.
I just remember the rain being harsh, and my windbreaker being soaked by the time I got back to my apartment. And I don't know. We started in Grand Central and we just kept walking, and we didn't. I don't know what direction. I didn't live there long enough to be able to tell you we were on Houston.
We ended up in Central Park, and then we had to navigate our way back. Like we had to navigate our way back to the subway stop where you were, because when I first got down, we were like trying to find our way, and I got to the point, and what happened is I knew you were lost, but I spotted you from across the street, and I finally was like, I don't even know how I got your attention. I think I called you or something like that, and then we finally met up, and we went back.
Yeah, I remember that. You picked me out of a crowd.
Yeah, I did. You know what? You weren't in the crowd. You were like pretty standout. Like I said, I never forget a face, so.
Yeah, you're good with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then from there we just became friends again and started keeping in touch more, maybe every few weeks, just chatting, or like an hour-long phone call, and you moved back home, and I moved back home, and the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history.
In 2019.
It's funny because
Stranger Things and Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, we were, and It Chapter 2, which was recorded shortly not thereafter. But yeah, because what happened was I graduated after a certain stint that happened my finals week that I'm not comfortable with getting into yet on the live stream, and you were again a very big source of help for me coming back from my college graduation, and it was really nice to get back together with you. We started chilling again. It was like no time had passed. It was great. And then I don't remember specifically, but it kind of just like went back. It's like we started reminiscing, and we were talking about the podcast. And I'm pretty sure you were the one who came up with the idea of like, hey, I'm doing this podcast with Andrew. I'd already known Andrew at that point. You know, we went over to Andrew's place. It was great. We chilled. I hadn't seen Andrew in a couple years at that point. It was awesome to get right back with him, and that was really cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you were a big part of my kind of like my comeback from my post college depression, I'll call it. So I really do have to thank you for that, because like I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing right now if you had, because I remember those first couple months after college, and my parents were both in that position of where they wanted to help me, but they also were like still really worried and kind of mad because they didn't want me to have wasted the last 4 years. Like it was rough. You remember in those first couple months out of school, it was rough. So I really have to thank you for helping me get through that, because like with where I am right now and with the confidence that I've built up and just everything that's happened since then, like none of that's there without you, you know, and with you kind of pushing me to get back into the game, you know. So because I made a second attempt, or more at that point, it was more like a fourth attempt at my channel to actually get it going, but by that point, Movie Nerd Reviews was dead and gone because there's just too many copyright strikes. So so we got going again. It took us a little bit to definitely get on a consistent schedule, I'll say. Those first couple weeks, there were a lot of gaps between when we actually put out episodes. We never missed
a week when we put an episode out.
Once we started consistently, because the problem was that we recorded Stranger Things and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in one setting with Johnny, and then we didn't put those episodes out for like a couple months. And then, because we recorded those in July, and then It Chapter 2, we saw that in September, and then we recorded that with Johnny as well. And now when we recorded that, we put all 3 of those episodes up at once, because I checked Anchor. All 3 of those episodes were uploaded on the same day. And then I think that was either when you went to California or you got sick. It was one of the two.
I went to Cali.
Right. That's what. Then you went to Cali, and then when you came back, we did Ad Astra and Joker, and from there, we didn't. I think there was a week break between Joker and The Boys, season 1, when we did that, and then it was with El Camino. Once we started with El Camino, which was our 7th episode, from there we did not miss a week until the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was I had a band and we were pretty serious. We had a manager, we were talking to a few record labels and stuff. So I was just like, how can I make all of this work, batching content? But I realized that it didn't have to be that serious, right? You could make it work. And I'm just reading the chat. Everyone's being so nice to each other in the chat right now. It's actually very awesome. Like what you guys are great. Yeah. I love like the positivity, but yeah, so I was like super embarrassed actually at first to have a film podcast, because I loved film, but it's like music was such a part of my identity where I was like, man, so many people know me for just music. Am I going to look like a hack? Like, I don't think I am, but I don't really know too well how to be a critic, and there's going to be a lot to learn, and am I willing to do that publicly? But then you got to think like, well, if you have a podcast, the only way you're going to learn is by being publicly putting out content. And so I got over it. And so there was just like a lot of like growing curves and learning curves, and just like, like weird little personal things where it's like, like you're your own worst critic. And it's ironic because we are critics.
I remember, critics are always their worst critics. But no, I remember that phone call when I remember a couple of those phone calls. We were like, Dom, man, I don't know. And I would talk you down. I'm like, Chris, you're in your own head. You're overthinking it. And I would basically like break down a laundry list of like, dude, I get it. I get where you're coming from, but this is what you need to be doing. And there were a couple of those phone calls at that time period.
Yeah, no, and so I'm glad we broke the mold, because now we literally have like this amazing community, this awesome podcast that we are so thankful to keep growing. And yeah, Brando, I'm actually going to be popping into Brando's housewarming stream later, and I'm sure you could too if you wanted.
We'll see.
He came to my birthday stream. I got to go to his housewarming,
but
and so no worries about leaving, man. Thanks for hanging for as long as you did, but. Yeah, funny, humble beginnings, and I say we're still in early stages, let's be honest.
Still, like from where we were 2 years ago to now, it's like...
Immense progress.
Immense is barely begins to cover it, I would say. But yeah, that is kind of, I guess, the humble origins of Talkin TV. Don't worry, there'll be many, many more stories just like about our past and certain of the things that we've done. Oh, man, because again, Chris thinks that he knows some of the crazy shit that I've gotten into. We haven't even scratched the surface as far as just some of the stuff that I did in my 2 years upstate. It was absolutely ridiculous. But so you want to get into two of the things that we said we were actually going to talk about tonight at the beginning of this?
Yeah, because there's much like that was awesome, just kind of hanging and chatting. But I want to hit some of the topics. We can't, you can't show your hand all at once.
No. It's part of it. You got to play it out. You got to tease the people before you bring them in with what it is that we wanted to talk about. So. Oh, man, I hate to say it, but I really think we jinxed it with how much we were hyping this up and how you're finally getting to have your moment. You're like, yes, this is my favorite new sitcom. We're finally talking about it. And then, oh, man, you asked me if we were a jinx, and I'm like, no. But at the back of my head, I was still asking myself, are we? And it almost makes me worried to really try and hype up a lesser-known show. Like, I'm honestly scared for All Mankind now. And that show is only in its second season, just hitting its stride, but I'm honestly scared. I'm like, no, it's like, I don't want this to happen, But, I mean, my rule is always 3 strikes and you're out. So if this happens a third time, that's when I'm going to start to get worried. But
that's when I'm just going to shut up about it all.
It happened with Glow. And we complained and we ranted and raved, but everyone moved on with their lives. And now, unfortunately, this has happened again because, unfortunately, it was announced in a tweet on, when was this? It was this week, I know it. So,
Monday.
What was it, it was Monday. It was announced in a tweet Monday that, unfortunately, the show's 2 creators, Ince Choi, and I forgot the other guy's name. Kevin White, officially announced that they were departing from Kim's Convenience. So, as a result, the CBC has officially decided to end the show after its 5th season, which is currently airing in Canada on the Pop TV CBC network and will officially be available to be streamed on Netflix 2 days after the final episode, which will be at some point in April. I don't remember off the top of my head, but motherfucker, the only thing I have to say is, God damn it, Chris, I finally fucking started watching the show, and you guys are gonna do this shit to me? Like, I know I'm coming at this from a completely different place than Chris is, because unlike Glow, the last one which I got Chris into, this is a show that Chris got me into, and I'm just like, come on, man. Like, we get it. The show was finally, but it's like, has this ever happened before? Have you ever seen a show canceled right when it was starting to pick up steam?
I mean, yeah, we've seen shows that have that happen to them, but so there's so many outstanding points of discussion here that make this situation uniquely different than other situations. And, hey, look, we have a few of other actors from the show coming on over the next few weeks, which I'm very thankful for, because some of these guys actually are in other productions too that we get to pick their brain about. So keep your eyes peeled, and maybe they'll be gracious enough to sort of let us know their, at least if not any tidbits of information, their thoughts and their feelings on it. Because I'm sure this was such a big part of their lives. I mean, it's like you're watching something go before its time, which is always sad. This is a strange situation because right here to read this Newsweek article. The show's co-creators, Inge Cho and Kevin White, were set to leave the show to focus on new projects after season 5, and the show's production company, Thunderbird, decided to not continue the show without its original creators. See, it's not like the network canceled them for once.
Right.
That's the strange thing. Like most of the times, there's a change.org petition going around right now. It's like at like 7,000 signatures or something. Save Kim's. Usually when that happens, it blows up and another network comes in, mostly Netflix, and saves it like a Cobra Kai and gives the show new legs. But the problem is the people who own the rights to it don't want to do anything with it unless the 2 original creators come back. Why would they leave? I don't know why, but
we can't fault them for that because we've seen this happen so many times where, again, like, not every show can pull a Veep and switch showrunners halfway through and still have it continue seamlessly like nothing happened. Or like when the show is, usually whenever you have a situation like that, the show shifts very radically and it usually almost always results near time when the show is going to end. So it's almost like kind of putting it out of its misery in a weird way. So like, I can't necessarily fault the network for the decision, but especially considering that, again, just with how some of the actors on the show were blowing up. But
the network didn't make a decision here. The only decision the network made here was renewing them at the end of season 4 for season 5 and 6.
Season 5 and 6. So it was simply the decision of to not go forward with the 6th season.
The problem is in most situations, see, Inge Cho, he was the playwright. If you guys go check out our interview with, Sujit and Zayed, we get into the history, and especially with Zayed, we get into how it was a play, and it was, Inge Cho wasn't getting work as a writer for TV, so he said, screw it, I'm going to go back to sort of what I got my start in, which was theater when I was younger, and he wrote what he knows, and he was a Korean immigrant in Canada, and so it's very much so like he's the only one who really can tell this story, which makes sense. And then Kevin White was his partner who came on when it got sold for television. He was kind of like a Canadian seasoned showrunner, writer who was going to be the guy to sort of show Inge Cho how to take his play and translate it to the big screen. And obviously their relationship was awesome. The problem is this show was not owned by the CBC, right? CBC was giving it legs, funding it, but usually it's like Netflix owns the production of Glow. See, this Thunderbird company is an outside company that partnered with CBC. It's like it's a very new thing that's happening because of streaming and because of all this thing. So CBC is literally as helpless as the fans. They were expecting a 6th season, possibly more. They're like, so when you sign with the record label, right? You in the modern day aren't 100% owned by that record label because you're not making traditional money off of like album sales. You're making money off streaming and all these different things. So the record label's fronting you money and they're getting some of your investment, but they're not getting all of the investment back like they used to. And that's kind of how you could think about it in this situation where CBC was fronting the money and Thunderbird was taking limited risk for that, but they own the IP. Normally, normally CBC, Netflix, right? We've said this many times right now. They normally own the IP. And that's the issue here. The person who owns the IP for once isn't the network, and networks are no stranger to selling off a dead IP and giving it to someone else to bring life because they gave up on the idea and hey, someone else can take it. And if they fail with it, hey, we at least made some money off our failed investment. It's not going to happen here.
Right. Which is
so the only way it can happen is if this production company sells their IP, which has got a lot of buzz, but it's dead now. It's so confusing.
I'm really glad that you broke that down because I'm already confused as far as keeping track of it. But basically what you're saying is that this production company is kind of in a little bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation because sure, they could sell it to Netflix, but if the original creators aren't going to come back to it, then probably you won't be able to get a large majority of the cast and essentially like you just wouldn't have a show. And then, what's it called? So it really is like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So, and it really sucks because again, it's going to be another one of the, just as far as forget the network rights and everything, as far as the story of the show goes, it's going to be another one of those situations where we're going to have a finale that doesn't feel like a finale because it's not. Because I guarantee you that the season 5 finale was probably going to build up towards whatever they were going to end up doing in season 6 and potentially beyond. And who knows if they'll be able to get in a last minute rewrite in order to make it feel like more of a wrap up and a finale. But like, oh my God. I mean, again, you're the bigger fan of the show. So like now that you've broken down like the rights, just break down just break down how you're feeling. Cause you saw this, I think, before I sent it to you, but I saw it first because I think Jad posted about it first on his Instagram and I saw it and I'm like, oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me. But yeah.
So here's another way to think about it, though, right? It's like normally a production company doesn't have to. So normally, like when CBC, right? CBC owns the property. They're going to choose to greenlight it for 2 more seasons. And if a creator leaves, they'll go out and they'll find more writers and stuff, and it's not a big deal. Like Veep, right, is a great example because HBO owns Veep. In this situation, though, you got to think about it from Thunderbird, the production company's perspective. They lost their 2 creative powerhouses behind their biggest production. Who's gonna want to run that? They have this contract with CBC for the 6th season, but after that, if they want to keep it going, unless Ince Cho and Kevin White come back, who's going to buy that from them?
Yeah.
They're just going to lose money putting out a bad season over time. It's going to hurt their brand.
Right.
So it really is a damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you look at it from all sides.
This is probably the strangest just like TV show ending situation ever. Like ever. And of course, what was starting to turn into like one of our favorite sitcoms now, not only does it get canceled, but it gets canceled in one of the most bizarre, strange ways possible. Like.
And then the last thing I got to read, just to show you like that there is some hope in Hollywood, is Simu Liu's reaction to this is really just profound, because you could tell the show wasn't just a paycheck for these guys, man. Yeah. He says, "I feel we deserved better. I feel that you, our amazing fans, deserved better." He fully expected to come back for a 5th or a 6th season. He says, "Remember their names, call their agents, cast them and everything. Our talent is undeniable, and we are nowhere close to being finished." And he goes on to talk about, this is it right here. He goes, "I feel like my journey with Jung was cut short. I feel you, the fans, deserve better." And he talks in here. He's like talking about Appa and how him and Appa are never going to get there. Will they come together? Will they not? I mean, we don't know. And that relationship is one of the most special things of the show.
Yeah.
And so go look that up, guys, because it's just, you can tell it was sad for these guys.
Yeah.
Like I watched Paul Lee's Instagram story, and like he normally does the Appa voice when he signs off. Okay, see you. He didn't do it. He couldn't. He was fighting back tears. It was terribly sad. And watching them all, these actors, say "okay, see you" for the first time in not a fun way was really not fun to see them end off their tweets. But like, what else can you do, man? Like as a fan, I love sitcoms, or I watch sitcoms because I love the ones that are amazing and they make up for all of the dead weight in between. And this show, just these characters, they feel so real. They make decisions that sitcom characters don't make because they're based on a play. And I think that helps. And the story this is what film school students are told to do, right? What they know, and it will be successful. Like this show is living and dying by that sword, right? Yeah. We just spoke so much about film school. It's just funny that we're talking about Kim's now, because it's literally
comes
like
together. All the pieces matter.
And it's just, these actors were just so perfect. The minimalism of their environment really just, there was never anything over the top. They never went to any big other location. They never had any crazy sort of stunt or sort of, smoke screen effect. It was just really good writing. It was fun. It was about a family who was sort of growing into the next stage, empty nesters, and the parents, the children going out on their own. I feel like everyone could see in themselves, or in one of these characters, a version of themselves, if not a version of themselves currently. And it's like, for shows to do that so well, and for sitcoms to do that so well too, and have it not be so fantastical, but be so rooted in reality, it's special. And that's, I think, what hurts the most is just, it's a little culty, this show. It was finally getting there. I don't know if it ever will now get to the place that I maybe foresaw it getting to. But it's just like, everyone who watches this show is heartbroken right now because, man, we all love our family, and like we love the Kim's family because they feel like people. What else can I say? It sucks.
You know what else? To me, it's, for all the fans of the show, it's discouraging, because I feel like after Glow, it's those writers that are struggling to actually tell those good stories, the stories that they know are great and matter and are personal, and the shit just keeps getting canceled and replayed. Like, to me, it's so discouraging as a writer trying to break into this industry when the shit that you love just keeps getting replaced by like the shit that makes money. We know that this is a business and the money comes forward, but it's like, this is just, this is just the stuff that always sucks about this. When, we have to make way for latest Marvel property, God only knows whatever number, that they can literally just get anyone to write and it won't matter because the brand awareness is so strong that everyone's going to watch it. Like, that's the shit that sucks to me more than anything else. And as if to make that point that you were saying about the characters, look, I've been very, very vocal about my thoughts on sitcoms in general and kind of like, but also just why I have my certain relationship with sitcoms that I do just based on kind of where my television watching journey started. It's a lot different than a lot of other people's. But to me, the thing that immediately distinguished this sitcom from others, and we're going to talk more about this when we talk about the 5th and unfortunately now final season when it finishes and airs on Netflix, is that this is the first sitcom where I felt like I was actually watching. Like, even with my favorite sitcoms, even with Community and Parks and Rec and my favorite sitcoms ever, I'm aware that I am watching sitcom characters. I am. I love Abed to death, and I fully am convinced that they finally nailed it. But part of the charm of Community is the fact that they are kind of self-aware of the fact that they are in a TV show. And yes, obviously, it kind of distracts from the fact that they're not real characters. This is the first sitcom where I can't even say that about The Office. Like, I won't get into a rant now, but I never bought into the idea that The Office was about real people, especially after a certain point. But this to me was the first sitcom where I actually bought into the idea of like, okay, these situations are certainly silly, but like all of the, like, I don't know what it was. I really, really don't. I have no idea. I couldn't place it yet because I haven't watched enough of the show, but this was the first show where I really, really felt like, okay, these are real people that I could run into. And sure, they have, like, the silly scenarios, and they have certain sitcom-y, like, supporting characters, but, like, with this core family, like, these all feel real. And these relationships feel real. And, like, to me, I just finished the first season the other day, and to me, the 1-2 punch of seeing Jung talk with Appa while he's high on whatever drug he's on after he got the lump removed, and having that beautiful heart-to-heart moment, followed by, in the next episode, seeing the three of them at the church singing contest, and seeing Appa there, like, I was almost moved to tears. And I haven't been moved to tears by a sitcom ever. Like, ever. Like, I think the closest I came was with the Parks and Rec series finale. And that was the closest that I came. And that was it. Like, I have not been this moved, almost that moved by a sitcom, like, ever. And that says something about the power of this show and just how strong the writing was and how good the acting was and how fucking, like, just, I'm already losing my train of thought as I'm doing it. But yeah, it was a great show. It's another one that's gone way too soon, and it just, the situation sucks because it's quite literally a situation that nobody could have predicted.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right about all that. It's just like they really tapped into something so special with these characters and just all the stars aligned, man. It's just one of those shows where everything worked out.
Yeah.
And for them to finally get to a point where it's making stars and it's catching steam and it has this international audience and all the actors' Instagram accounts are blowing up.
Two of the actors are now in Star Wars and Marvel. Like,
yeah, exactly. How do you leave your baby that you struggled with, that you couldn't get a job in the film industry, which you graduated college for, so you went back to theater with? How do you... I don't know. I don't know how you walk away from that.
If I can venture a guess, and I don't want to make presumptions on anything, I think they saw the writing on the wall, and I think they said, look, the show is finally catching the steam. We got to make a move now, or else we're going to get stuck with this, because they knew, again, Paul's in Star Wars. Simu is now going to be, and not just in Marvel, he will be a Marvel superhero. Like, he will be getting his own. He's not coming in and being introduced in another movie before he gets his own movie. He is leading his own movie with Shang-Chi. And I think they saw the writing on the wall, and I think they realized that, yeah, this is our moment. And it sucked that they couldn't at the very least finish the show, because I kind of already had an inkling that it was going to go the way that Schitt's Creek did when Schitt's Creek really blew up last year on Netflix and put kind of the CBC on the map, and they saw what season 6 did for them. And again, as far as why they didn't stick it out and just finish the show with season 6, I have no idea. That I can't really speak to, but I think just as far as like why, I think for those reasons, it's apparent. Again, I'm not trying to make any statement. I have no idea. I could be entirely 100% wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if the minute that Paul and Simu were cast and under the Disney banner, the offers really started to roll in for them, and they kind of had to make their move before it was too. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the case.
Yeah, money talks, I guess.
Money talks. Disney always wins. That's all I have to say to that.
I just want to close by saying, if you guys are just wanting something that will just, charm you in a way that you never thought imaginable. Something that isn't going to be zeitgeisty, so get over that at this point. It's going to have a little moment with season 5 and all the drama, unfortunately negative press around the cancellation. But it's something that if you just like, it's just going to be special to you if you watch it, you know, especially like I think a lot of our audience would like it. But if you can make time for the show, I'd say make time for the show because I think it's got to live on. The legacy is going to live on with me at least. I'm never going to shut up about it.
Yeah, because again, I still remember that this was the first show that you told me about when I first got out of school, throwing it back to our origin word, that first diner sit down that we had. I still remember it vividly to this day when I was still a little shaky and like not entirely myself yet. You were telling me about Kim's. And I'm like, man, I have no idea what he's talking about, but man, he is enthused about this show, you know?
When was that?
Right after I got out of school, May of 2019. I remember we ran into Mike Adams that day too at the diner. It was in the Palace Diner, right by Marist College. So I remember that day like it was yesterday. So and the fact that it took me 2 years to finally start watching the show. Again, I had to finish Lost in the Wire and a couple of other shows first, but by the time I finally got to it, I'm like, yeah, no, I understood from the minute I finished the first couple episodes. I'm like, yeah, I understand immediately what he's talking about. This show has a magic that very, very few other shows have. And it's funny because it's that situation that we always find ourselves stuck in, which is where we always want the show to blow up because we want other people to experience what we've experienced with it. But we also know that, again, like with Game of Thrones, when it blows up to that level, it kind of doesn't become our show anymore. And that's usually typically when the bad writing practices and kind of the stupidness, because they're trying to satisfy so many people, usually steps in, you know, where it really is a tomato. So few shows can really hit that and really satisfy that niche. Again, but yeah, it's unfortunately...
next month we're covering fifth season.
Next month,
we'll see if it was a good call.
Yeah, we'll see. We will ultimately see again where season 5. I've still got a little ways to go. I've still got 3 seasons to catch up with. But look, I did it with Better Call Saul, so I'll do it for Kim's. Is all I have to say to that. So
hell yeah, brother. Yeah, and Dom, the next topic that I kind of wanted to talk about because I just finished watching the first and only season so far is like an IP that Netflix has invested heavily in for some reason.
Yes,
like they have an animated show coming out this year, movie or whatever. We don't know exactly what it's going to be.
I know about the spinoff. I don't know about anything else.
There's an animated, people speculate if it's a movie, if it's a limited series. There's a spin-off. We don't even have season 2 yet. There's a spin-off. Season 2's supposedly coming out in August, last I checked. The Witcher.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to ask you that because this is kind of like more so your area of expertise because you were the one that brought it up. You were the one that was hyping it up because like it's so weird because The Witcher to me, when I watched that, I watched it in 2019 when it came out. Like, it's so weird. Like, usually, if something blows up, I never catch up with it until later. But if something comes out, it's not big in the moment, but it blows up later on. I've always watched it before everyone else did. Like, so I watched The Witcher when it first dropped, and I watched it, and I enjoyed it. It was good. I understood it was no Game of Thrones, but look, it's a solid first season of television. And as far as they're having promise for the future, cool. I knew it had a very big IP that it was based off of, but I'm like, look, I caught the show first, so I'm not going to go back and read the books because now I'm not going to get spoiled because my rule is if I only read something if I can get it before the property comes out. If the property comes out first and I don't finish it, sorry, I'm not finishing that book, you know? So, and I'm not a video game player, so I'm like, I knew nothing about the video game. So it was weird because this was one of those scenarios that seemed right up your wheelhouse, but I ended up hitting it first and I enjoyed it. But it kind of just fizzled out because it was one of those things where it felt like they were discussing that this was going to be the next big thing. And then obviously only 3 months later, the pandemic hit. And then obviously nobody knew what the fuck was going to happen next with the future of entertainment. Now that we're finally back to this kind of semi-weird place of still transitioning back to normal, but starting again, we're still getting new shows to really talk about and kind of engage us with a little bit. So walk me through now kind of what happened with you, because I remember the only real big thing was I gave it a shout out on our best TV shows of 2019 list. So kind of walk me through like what happened with you, because we didn't really talk about this a whole lot. All I know is that in the last couple of weeks you started bringing it up a couple times, and I'm like, wait, is The Witcher season 2 still happening? Like the only thing that I'd heard was the spinoff about it, and that was it.
Yeah. So I looked it up, and The Witcher season 2 is supposedly completed, and now they're in post-production. And it's set to release in 2021, estimated window of August, like I said, I guess. So I guess I was kind of right with that. I'm on MSN.com. Who knows if they're gossips, right? But I just looked it up as we were sort of chatting here to make sure it was all, squared away. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like one of those shows that it came out so close to Game of Thrones ending that I think there was some fatigue there where I was so let down by Game of Thrones and the 2-year gap in between the, final season and just all the hype, and it didn't live up to it. We're gonna get into Game of Thrones on this channel sooner than later, but basically
we've got a big thing planned for that.
It was, they marketed it as like the Game of Thrones killer. This is going to be your next, fantasy binge, and none of it lived up to that for me. I just remember I tuned out halfway through the 6th episode, the episode where they're on that little like one-off journey to go kill the dragon.
Yeah, that's right.
And he ends up being the dragon. Spoiler alert! And the golden dragon or whatever.
Oh my god!
And
I still remember that Netflix CG and thinking, "Oh my god, this is only how many months after the fucking dragons in the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, which is like some of the greatest television CG ever put to screen."
Yeah, and so I just wanted to close it off because I figure we'll probably cover it when it comes out. It'll be something a little different from the Marvel and DC and all that stuff we normally do, the Disney type of stuff. And it's cool. Like, I like the video games. I played Witcher 2 and 3. Never got too far in them because they're like, I don't know, 400-hour games. You need to put that much time in those games to get through the story. And so I get far and I enjoy it. And then I'm like, okay, well, it's starting to feel like work now. And I normally get like the first quarter of those games done because honestly, who's got time to beat that? Just too much. I can't. But I enjoy them a lot. So I was excited. Really, I was. Henry Cavill looks just like the character from the video games. It's insane. He is actually a good actor. I thought he sucked at acting, and I actually really like him now. He's grown on me. I think he plays Geralt really well. The problem is the show is just boring, in my opinion. I mean, it has its moments, but it's so funny that we talked about Duchess early on in the stream because Pat, I'll credit him with this. I haven't heard this anywhere. Professor Pat, friend of the show, as you guys know, has been talking a lot lately about the pilot season, which is sort of a new phenomenon that he's observed in the film industry. He kind of likens it to perfectly shows like The Witcher, where I'll ask you this, Dom, because
yes, I think I know where you're going with this, but yeah.
I don't feel like we got a season. Rather, I feel like we got a taste test. And hey, if you guys like this, now we're going to get into the good stuff.
1,000% right. Yes.
And that's the pilot season.
I already agree with you. Yes, and that is the pilot season where rather than getting a season of television, a full season of television, you essentially get a pilot episode stretched out into however many episodes, 8, 10 episodes, basically. But yeah.
Mandalorian season 1, right?
Yep.
It was just pretty much a long origin story, and you meet all these characters, but was there really any big questions answered? Was there really any big questions even, raised?
Right. Yeah. Which, again, it's so weird because my personal thoughts that I can weigh on it. I think that's always been the trick of TV. I think it's evolved and changed as time has gone on. But I think obviously, again, with streaming and specifically with it started with the shorter television season, but now specifically with streaming and dropping it all at once, I definitely think that has become much, much more prevalent recently than not.
Yeah. And now here's the caveat, right? Because this type of thing annoys me. It really does.
Me, not as much, but I know how much it annoys you.
Because I just think it's a de-evolution. I think it gives TV a bad name. And to me, I love movies. My love for movies has grown so much since starting this podcast, because it's just such a completely different form of art. But tangents aside, TV has kind of been my bag. I mean, there's a reason why one person's nameplate says one thing and one says the other, right? And so it just feels like to have this golden age of TV, then like 10 years later, get these sort of half-baked, really character studies as opposed to arcs, just doesn't cut it for me. But here's the caveat. With The Witcher, I didn't hate it. I hate the idea of this pilot season, and most other pilot seasons have sucked, in my opinion. But I didn't hate it. And I'm trying to figure out where I stand with this show, because I didn't love it. Nowhere near am I going to go back and am I going to refresh my top 10 of 2019 and cut something out for this? Maybe I'd cut The Mandalorian season 1 out. But maybe just that one. But I also wouldn't put this in my worst of the year by far, because there's something in it that gets me excited, but I just think it's such the wrong, you don't want a free trial with TV, right? You don't subscribe to HBO. You're not paying money to a service to then watch a bunch of free trials, right? If you're paying for the service, you want the content that comes with the service. Yet in this specific situation, I didn't mind what felt to me like the free trial. And I'm actually kind of looking forward to season 2 because they did like that last episode really should have been the pilot, in my opinion. Right. It was very interesting. Yeah, well, everyone sort of converged.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That specifically, I texted this to a couple people. I'm like, again, like The Witcher, like, again, like it was background noise for me because it was mostly just side quests until all of a sudden the last 2 episodes tied into the first episode and revealed that like everything we'd been watching had actually like taken place before the events of the I'm like, wait, what? Why are they doing a time loop here? Like, what is going on? And like, it definitely set itself up for a very weird feeling finale, to say the least.
And that's why I'm so curious to like cover it on our channel. I want to, because I hate that my only intrigue, however, coming back to my real issues with it, which I do think trump the one caveat where I did enjoy a lot of it, even though it did not feel very cohesive. You know, I'm only excited right now, really, for season 2 because of the recency bias, because I love the games and I have faith in the games and the writing, but also because they gave us so little of substance. I want to actually see what they're capable of. And to me, that feels wrong. That feels wrong as an artist, giving that to an audience. It doesn't feel honest, but what's your take on that?
So I'm actually really glad that you brought this up, because this is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. We've kind of been dipping into it with bits and pieces with all the TV that we've covered now, but I've noticed this problem specifically in how it afflicts dramatic television much more so than comedic television, just because of, again, just the nature of the storytelling that goes into that, which is the hype machine and the marketing. I've noticed this way back in the early 2010s with Walking Dead, where, again, you feel like you're getting slogged along and dragged along for it. I fully blame Walking Dead for this, because to me, every show that's done this since then, I first know no show before Walking Dead did this, where they would slog you along for a season where nothing happens, and then the last episode is a game changer, where it's like, oh my god, and you have to see what happens next. They did this every fucking season. It happened at the end with the farm getting burned down, and oh, are they going to get Sophia? It happened at the end of season 3 with the governor's first attack. It ended with season 4 with the cannibals, and they're like, oh, how are they going to escape the cannibals? And they blew them up in the first episode. It happened with season 5 when they reach Alexandria, and then the moment where I officially checked out of that fucking show because I was sick and tired of getting dicked along was the infamous cut to black at the end of season 6, where they were like, oh, we're not going to tell you who Negan killed. You got to tune in next season. Like, I have officially blamed this on Walking Dead. And now I've noticed like that a lot of other television, because again, it's the same thing that Game of Thrones did. It's like, why do we actually have to care about what the story is when we can just keep suckering people with these gimmicks that will have them coming back? Like, obviously, again, I know that's not the exact dialogue exchange that happens in the writer's room, but it's just that mentality that I feel like spreads, where, again, the idea of the gotcha moment in TV is nothing new, but it's definitely been perpetuated, I feel like, and I definitely think that it is sunken now into and taken root into streaming in the worst way possible, where, again, I've said this before, streaming, it's so weird, where it feels like streaming was supposed to be a solution with the problems that we had with network TV, and now it feels like they're going backwards and just now finding new ways to incorporate all the problems that we had with network TV into streaming with these seasons that add nothing to the story, which, again, before we could blame that on writer strikes, but now what do we do? You know, who do we blame a bad season of a show on? You know, it's like I ultimately have no words, and I'll definitely say I haven't had as much of a problem with it, mostly because typically those shows that I feel like I have that problem with, I usually don't come back to watch, or they usually don't end up going on for that long, because I have seen my fair share of shows where it's like, oh, okay, now I'm into it, like American Vandal, and then those shows get canceled, you know? So it's this really weird spot that I've been finding myself in the last couple of years, probably because I haven't really been watching a lot of the mainstream shows, but now we're starting to see it affect the mainstream shows, specifically with WandaVision, where, and we did talk about this, which is where, like, again, like, just the format in which it is released aside, again, to me, WandaVision and the story that told was not a bad one, I don't think at all. I actually think for what it was trying to go for, as far as the underlying theme, was actually really impressive and mature, especially for Marvel stuff. I think that show falls down, it gets bogged down because of the spread and the pace of its story, as far as the whole water cooler moment not actually being able to compensate for the fact that they literally had to stretch a 2-hour story out into 9 episodes that of like half an hour each, so like 5 hours roughly, give or take, a 5-hour story, cobbled together with the fact that it is it feels once again like the whole season was just a pilot, and as a result, again, like stories only work when you have some sort of conclusion. Again, like to me, the cliffhanger ending only works so far, and I still feel like cliffhangers are a little bit too much of a gimmick, and I think that there needs to be more thought put into wrapping it up. You know, like to me, again, how was it that Breaking Bad and The Sopranos were able to keep people coming back every year without needing to do gimmicky twist endings? Breaking Bad and Sopranos never did that. And they will always manage to evolve the storytelling. They always managed to get better. Every one of those seasons was a self-contained season. Yes, obviously, they had underlying story themes that presented themselves throughout it, but you still had a full and complete story each season. And I'm blaming it on the franchiseification because, again, everyone thinks that they can do what Marvel is doing, where Marvel can leave shit open-ended, you know, because they have such a trackable success rate that they can basically do whatever they want. And that, to me, is what's seeping into the rest of the industry. Like, I don't have any other explanation for it because you just didn't see this shit happen before Marvel.
You're right. You're totally right. This is,
you know?
I was going to do, you know, I was going to say, Dom, do you know what this is?
I think the only one that I can think of is maybe the only gimmicky twist ending, I guess you could say, is at the end of Breaking Bad's second season when they reveal when they do kind of like the chain of events as to how Walt unintentionally caused the plane crash that they've been hinting at throughout all of season 2. But even then, like, that's just brilliant storytelling is how that's layered in. You know, that's not like a gimmicky twist to get you to be like, oh, come back next season in order to find out what happened. You know, the story is resolved. The story is ended there, you know? So, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the end of my rant. What were you going to say?
No, do you know what this is?
Ding, ding, ding.
You hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
You nailed it. I mean,
it's the only explanation I can think of, given my, again, I know nothing about television. I've never been in a writer's room in my entire life. I have no idea how this stuff works as far as the trickle-down effect of certain, but all I know, the one thing I do know is that, look, the shit that makes a lot of money and the shit that is successful, that shit has ripple effects throughout the industry. We've been seeing it, and frankly, suffering through it, I will say, for the last 10 years now with the Marvelification of it. So
they set a precedent for better or for worse, and there is fallout from that type of stuff. Yes. And I think that's some of this fallout on the smaller screen. Yeah, you're totally right, man.
And I think my other big problem, too, is the fact that it's not just that it seems to have been having this ripple effect throughout the industry in a lot of wrong ways, but also the fact that just no one wants to try anything different because every time they fail, they just cobble it up as a failure, and it's almost like they try the same thing again. And then when that one thing works, they just keep going with it. And like, that's the part to me of Hollywood where I'm like, I don't understand where they go with this. It's the Warner Brothers sinking God only knows how many millions of dollars into the Snyder Cut and then saying that it was a bad investment. Just those types of decisions where I'm like, I assume that's just all the drugs that Hollywood does on a daily basis talking, because that shit just makes no fucking sense at all.
I agree with everything you just said, like 110%. And I'll add one last point, sort of doubling back to The Witcher and doubling down on what you said. While I was intrigued and while I am interested in what happens next, it's because partly I really enjoy the cast, the characters really felt great, and there were some pretty great moments. Those last 2 episodes were like, okay, that was solid fantasy TV. Let's just be honest. Let's, call it like we see it.
Again, I didn't have a problem with any of the episodes. I liked the season as a whole, just like with the way that ended. And I'm like, oh, what? I'm all of a sudden now supposed to care that there was some sort of underlying story throughout the whole thing when the majority of the season seemed like a series of one-off quests. Like that was kind of my first indication. And I didn't really know that. I paid more attention to Mandalorian because that was week-to-week water cooler talk. But like, I was just like, wait, what? And I wasn't the only one, because my grandpa had the exact same reaction to that when he told me about that.
Yeah, exactly. And it was lazy. And to be honest with you, part of my intrigue for a second season of a show should never be because are we going to get something of substance this season? Right. And I can tell you right now, my patience is growing very thin with all of these types of shows. And I don't know what's going to really come. I mean, we'll always produce good content here on the channel, but I'm almost to the point where, like, look, I'll give it like another year, but if this keeps happening, because it's only been getting worse, it's only been happening more and more, where shows like The Boys are the outlier because they actually give you something of substance each season, that is crazy to me. But getting something of value in a season should not be the anomaly.
And the other thing that I'll add to that is that at the very least, as much as we complain, and we did about The Boys finale and how weird it felt, at the very least, It was wrapping up a season. And that story, that specific story that was covered from episode 1 of that season to episode 8 was over. You know, and it didn't feel like we were missing anything. It didn't feel but my only problem with that was the fact that that show was over and the season was over, and then they tacked on the gimmicky twist to be like, "Yep, tune in next season." And that to me, again, like what was our biggest problem with that season finale? The post-credit scene when they revealed that it was the Congresswoman who was the head blower upper. You know, so
but at least that was a little more. Sorry, no, at least that was a little more traditionalistic in the sense where our complaints were rooted in being film critics.
Right.
Whereas we're not complaining about the film right now. We're complaining about the application by the filmmakers, the distribution of their product, the approach. We're complaining about the approach they took in regards to hooking us.
We're criticizing the actual product, not the process to make the product, which again, I think if that speaks to the larger process of what film criticism in the modern age has become, I feel, again, because Marvel and because of the internet, how we have such a greater knowledge and understanding of the behind the scenes things, which again is still a very recent phenomenon, which is something that largely regular people did not have for a large portion of filmmaking history. I feel like now Marvel is even taking that into account and is even using that as weapons to continue to market its product. And now, as a result, it's almost like, again, as critics, we are forced to criticize the process and not the actual product, because it feels like by the time the actual product comes out, it's too little too late. And it's like the idea and kind of the stance on it has already been determined. And the problem with that is that has nothing to do with the actual, that is only a result of economy and circumstance because of time, because of technological access. And that's really not something that we can change. And we know for a fact, just because of how trends work, that's something that will only continue to get worse on our end. And that's the part where I feel like we as critics have to step back and ask ourselves, okay, is it the process that's faulty, or is it just us that we just simply do not like it, you know? But this is the way that things are done now.
Yeah, but I don't think just because something's changed to be a certain way means you have to accept it.
I agree. I mean, I agree with that.
That's just something I can't get behind because, you know, I know what you're trying to say. Yeah. I disagree with it. The last thing I'll say is, like, I'm sick of talking about psychology of marketing when talking about films. I miss talking about psychology of the character. Like, I understand psychology is a huge factor when really dissecting and being critics and analyzing why their choices and motivations made sense or didn't make sense. And you guys know the deal. We're not actually talking about a specific movie right now, but
you know,
I'm sick of talking. I'm sick of. Sorry, I just want to say, I'm sick of speculating how they focus tested something. I'm sick of speculating was the plan to drop the first 3 at once and then put the others out afterwards because they knew it hooked people. That should not. To me, that's just not what we should be talking about.
Infuriates me even more about that. What you just said is the fact that now they can use that as an excuse to excuse bad writing, and it just makes the vast amount of mediocre and shitty content that we get more acceptable. The process of psychoanalyzing the process has made it, because now they know that regardless of what they put out, there'll always be something to talk about. Because even if the product itself is good, because back in the day, if something sucked, like, everyone was talking about that because nobody knew what to play. They just knew that what they didn't know any better. They just knew that what they watched they didn't like, you know? Now, because we have such an insight to the behind the scenes, we know, okay, they're like, okay, what you watch you may not have liked, but at the very least, you know, you can find out why you didn't like it. It's almost like that's excusable now. You know, that is really what is fucking wrinkling my brain more than anything else. It's just another, again, I know that this is not on the outside, but just my conspiracy theory, like how Hollywood is constantly trying to just, you know, create just a constant cash stream for themselves without actually having to put any thought into creating good stories, you know?
Dude, you nailed it. Q says, congrats on the 300. Thank you, brother. Always appreciate it, man. We'll have to get you back on the show here sooner than later. I
don't like to dive into conspiracy theories, but...
No, you're right. And I had one last final statement to say, like, Part of why I think I loved Judas and the Black Messiah so much was because our podcast was not about all of this speculation into the process and the distribution. It was actually about the film. And I've been noticing lately that it's not our fault, because what can we do? Really, what can we do when WandaVision is what it is and it's released the way it is and everyone's talking about it for not what it is, but what its intentions were. Like, Judas and the Black Messiah was like one of the first times in a long time when we genuinely just talked about film.
We did the same thing with Raya and the Last Dragon too, where I was that half of the podcast was so beyond refreshing because we didn't have to talk about the book. We could talk about how much we loved the movie, just the movie and the story itself. And it sucks because now that's what? 1 out of every 10 podcasts that we do? Not even if we're lucky?
Yeah.
And it's just really disheartening to me.
And we can't now call it out as critics.
TV. Yeah.
It's our job as critics.
Because we're never going to go easy on something just because everyone else is. That's not what we do. That's not what our job, that's not what our role in society is. Great stories have only been able to continue to be great stories because of people like us. So, I'm sorry, Hollywood, but if you're trying to crush out the critics, guess what? You've only made us stronger. So keep putting out shitty products, shitty, mediocre products, because we're just going to keep coming back and bashing it even harder until you actually start to give us some motherfucking good shit.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say before you wanted to get into the Razzies, right?
Yes.
Before we jump off of here?
Probably not as much time as I did one, but that was mostly just a roast fest.
That's fine. Yeah. The last thing I'll say is it just, for me, at least like every now and then there's that movie that makes you feel like you're back to the heart of criticism. Like TV is just in a dangerous place with streaming.
Yeah.
It was so good, and now we're past the honeymoon phase. We're past that.
And the crazy thing is that movies were in that space a couple of years ago, and now, ironically enough, because of the corona, it almost like ended up like in a weird way saving movies, because it made movies the center of a conversation and allowed movies like Nomadland and Minari to actually like have a life with audiences, way more so than if they had come out in theaters and had the traditional Oscar run and only been seen by people like us, and nobody that would have known about those movies would have been able to see them until it was too late and the discussion was done. Like, that was awesome in a weird way. Again, not to shine any light on the pandemic, but like of the few things that did come out of that, like, like, would you have heard about a movie or even cared to see a movie like Minari? But again, taking the podcast out of it, if just your regular viewing self, pre the pandemic, would you have even known about it?
Not at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's let's hope TV can get back on its.
Let's hope, because it is. I agree. It is in a rough spot right now. So yeah, you want to get
now?
Into
I wanted to talk about The Witcher.
No, yeah, right. I thought that I had no idea where this was going. Like when you brought up, I really want to talk. I'm like, where is this going? But I'm like, okay, cool. If he's down, I'm down. You know that. But so you want to talk about the Razzies?
At least a little bit. You brought it to my attention.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a joke. Look, I don't take the Razzies seriously at all. The only thing that I'll say to them is, look, every once a year, I always get that little brief surprise. It's always an award season where again, I'm steeped in the mist. I'm like, okay, the Golden Globes, and everyone's gonna roast them for again, just a ceremony about a bunch of celebrities getting drunk, and everyone's gonna take that shit way too seriously. But I'm looking at the SAGs and the BAFTAs and the Critics' Choice and the Indie Spirit Awards. I've got like all my charts aside and I'm doing all the analysis. I'm like, okay, he's in this, so he's getting the nomination. He's in this, and he's getting the nomination. And then I'm scrolling through my phone and I always see the Razzie nominations. I never remember when they're gonna come out because I don't care about the Razzies in general. I feel like nobody in their right mind should. But I always get that brief surprise, and it always works because it's always a surprise when I get that brief moment to just scroll through the nominations and understand, yes, at the very least, the Razzies understand the one thing that none of the rest of Hollywood seems to understand, which is they know how to have fun. And the good thing at the very least is that the actors involved who actually show up to these things, which again, I don't even know if there actually has been a Razzie ceremony. I have no idea how I'm surprised they don't just rent a room out and just fucking just like get drunk as possible. But to me, I always remember is Halle Berry, only a couple years after she'd won her Oscar, actually showing up and accepting the Razzie for Worst Actress for Catwoman, and thanking the director for, in her exact quotes, casting her in that piece of shit movie. So,
amazing.
If that doesn't tell you how the people who run the Razzies take this shit, then I don't know what will. But it was definitely the highlight of my day today. So when I saw the post and I scrolled through, and forget the nominees in general and who got nominated, because again, it's pretty understood what are usually the worst movies of the year. But just reading off to me, one of my favorite things that I always do every year when the Razzies get announced is reading off the nominees for worst on-screen combo. They're always hilarious. They're always absolutely ridiculous, and it never ceases to amaze me how far they will go in order to string together some conclusions. Like, I'm not going to read off all the nominees because, again, like, just I hope that you guys have seen none of these movies. But I love it when I actually get to read off the fact of, oh my God, is it not on the Wikipedia page? Damn it, hang on. I got to look it up now. When I get to read the worst on-screen combination awards, because they're always just incredible. Like, just the wording and the phrasing, it's insane. And so, as I wait for this super slow page to actually load, I don't know why. You know what? Screw it. I'm just pulling up the article on my phone because I'm impatient and I don't feel like waiting. And I know that I texted this to you only a little bit before. Mm-hmm. As I read to you guys the nominees for worst on-screen combo for the Golden Raspberries, and they are as follows: Maria Bakalova and Rudy Giuliani for Borat's subsequent movie film.
Wow.
Robert Downey Jr. and his utterly unconvincing Welsh accent from Doolittle. Harrison Ford and that totally fake-looking CGI dog, in quotes, from Call of the Wild. Lauren Lapkus and David Spade from The Wrong Missy. And my personal favorite, just because I feel like that spoke to me and a lot of other people in more ways than one, Adam Sandler and his grating simpleton voice from Hubie Halloween. Like, that was amazing. Amazing.
Boo.
Just booed. Props. I tip my hat to you, Razzies, for never ceasing to amaze me with some of your with those combos. Like, I'm not gonna read off the rest of the nominees because I don't think the Razzies actually want that much attention shown on them. But like, come on, even if you don't agree with the choice or the word usage, you have to respect just how little they give a fuck, and the fact that there is still an institution in Hollywood that gives as little of a fuck about this stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's just, we don't need to take it too seriously.
Yeah,
There's bigger things to worry about is what it tells me.
Yes.
And,
but and I know that you're personally hurt by the Sandler one because I know how much you love that movie, but like, you understand though where they're coming from with that.
I totally understand where I'm coming from and my liking the film. It's very targeted for me in a weird way. So I get it 100%.
And in a weird way, I was not surprised at all when you told me that. Like, at all. Like, when you told me how much you love that movie, I'm like, yeah, I see it. I watched the trailer. I'm like, I am not watching this. I am done with this type of movie from Adam Sandler, especially considering that we got that a year after Uncut Gems, which was a revelation for so many different. I'm like, I am done with watching these types of movies from Adam Sandler. But yeah, I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, man, he did what he said he was gonna do.
He did. But here's the thing, though. I still don't believe that was his worst movie yet. I still think that, dude, I didn't even watch that movie, and I'm like, no, this movie I can already tell is not nearly as bad as Jack and Jill or Ridiculous Six, and just some other straight up just offensive movies that he's made, you know?
Exactly.
Like, I know for a fact, I'm like, dude, if I'm still waiting for it to see if he can top Ridiculous Six with how bad his movies can get. Like, I'm waiting. Like, that movie was offensive at points. I've never said that about an Adam Sandler movie, like, ever.
He's prolific. It will come. We will be here for it.
I'm waiting. Like, I will watch it. I'm like, Sandler, if you can top, you've made a lot of bad movies. If you can top Jack and Jill, I'll watch it. But that's it. I will only watch it if he truly says that it is his worst movie yet. If he actually does, I will truly believe it. Because, look, I can't fault Sandler because, look, I think that everyone has kind of come to this understanding about Happy Madison that, like, look, yeah, they're going to turn out a certain quality of movie. And you can watch it or not. But if you complain about it, you can't really if you know what to expect from it, you know? But, look, every single person that I've heard that talks about working on Happy Madison says that it is one of the best places to work. And they say that Adam Sandler and all of his guys are like the nicest people to work with. And that it is absolutely awesome. And it's great. And they all make money. Because those movies still have their diehard followings. And there's a reason why those movies have brought a lot of subscribers towards Netflix. So,
well, they got paid up front with Netflix, so it doesn't even matter.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, there you go. So, unless anyone else has any comment sections to hit, like, Yeah, that's pretty much it. That was that's 300 subscribers for us, dude. And all that I have to say is onward and upward for us, because
Yes.
I cannot freaking wait to see what the future holds just for the rest of this year. You know, we've got some big plans for the rest of this year, just as far as certain content, certain new things that we're going to start to bring onto the channel. You know, we've announced Talkin' Thrones a couple times now, but we're going to keep hinting at it until we officially have the big reveal. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned for that for you guys. We've still got a ton of crazy stuff planned for the rest of March, just to give you guys a taste of what we've got. So today is Friday. So this coming Monday, we will be doing our next podcast episode talking about finally, we will have the wide release for the Russo brothers' new movie following up Avengers Endgame, the new Apple TV Plus original Cherry starring Tom Holland. The following Wednesday is an episode that I will say I could not be more excited both to personally partake in and for you guys to witness. I've been talking about kind of my relationship with Nicolas Cage on this channel for a couple months now, and I am beyond happy to announce that our next first time watch will be happening on Wednesday. People, we're doing, I want to take his face off. We're doing it. We're doing face off. It's going to be insane. Like Chris has only seen a few, and Chris only has yet to scratch the surface of some of the crazy, insane Nicolas Cage movies. I showed him some clips from Deadfall. He is not ready for what. So all I'm going to say is if you guys liked our Tenet and Silence of the Lambs first-time watches, be prepared for another first-time watch unlike any that you have ever seen before. And the following Friday, we'll, of course, be kicking off with the latest Marvel Enslavement tour with Falcon and Winter Soldier with that first episode. So, yeah, we've got plenty more stuff to keep you guys very much entertained for the rest of March, but that's just what we got planned for the next week. Chris, you got anything else that you want to add to that?
No, just thank you so much for the big 300. I know there'll be many more, and it's because of you guys, and I appreciate it. Now,
Yes.
in the past and in the future, it always will mean a lot. So thank you guys so much.
Yes, absolutely. Again, you guys want to keeping track of what it is that we've been up to and when we post content and how often we post content and all of that. You can click the subscribe button if you haven't already. You can click the bell next week to get notified. You can click the like button, which just helps us out, and you can leave a comment down below once this live stream is over with in order to continue to point out new suggestions for new content that we could put and add to this channel. And of course, if you want to keep track of us and just all the new updates, you can follow us on our social medias at Facebook and Instagram at Talkin TV or at Talkin TV Podcast. No G. Chris, of course, where can the good people find you in this never-ending hype train that I'm going to keep going up until you actually release these new tracks of music that you've been working on?
Yeah, no, it's going to be a while, but I'm happy to let them know that they can find me at Christian Ivanko to keep up to date with the progress. It's going well. Like I started another new track earlier today. The creative fires are still burning brightly. I also have older music you can go and find. Get acquainted with what I've created in the past, you know? So find me at Christian Ivanko. It's a lot more music over there and a little less talking, but there's still some talking, of course. So
Nice,
yeah,
of
thanks
course.
guys.
Well, look, where we will be, there will always be talking. I think that's just safe to say. Like, it's me. Anytime I'm on something, everyone just kind of collectively groans and is like, ugh, get ready for just nonstop talking and try to get a word in. So, but look, you know that's what you get when you get with me, and you get us, and you get Chris, and just all the good Talkin' TV goodness. So as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more motherfucking movies. We'll see you guys on the next 300. Catch you next time.